Oh, we can't wipe our ears with it. How you doing?
Can you do the station ID too?
God bless you. Thank you so much. That's okay.
The station ID and bring her in.
And the station ID and then click play.
That's good.
And then after the first verse.
You was like, why you waving?
First verse they come in.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna let you know what we do. We open up with you telling a little bit of your testimony.
Okay.
And God gave me the subject, life-changing decisions. And we're gonna talk about your book, The Drivers. This is a good book. This is a good book. I'm like, and I've been so busy, but I've been like, reading. This is a good book.
Thank you so much.
So we kind of want to talk about that.
20 seconds.
And yeah. So, and we just ask God to just have His way. We prayed already, so we'll get ready to start it, and then just share the testimony. I know you knew my cousin.
Yes.
That's my God. I used to babysitter.
Station ID.
I know, I'm trying not pressing
Is
it.
it on the board?
Oh. No.
WOVU LP Cleveland.
Play the song. You got it. This is my co-host, my host. I don't like calling her co-host because I keep telling her we're together. But Charnay, Minister J. Floyd, he actually go to church with Billy. You go to New Community.
Yeah, I
right?
forgot.
It's
I forgot that they
it's
would
like
cut the books. I'm
so
like,
many people are
now
angry.
you know when you don't hear anything, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's not on.
Okay.
That is my home. Saved my life going there.
Really?
I can't say enough about Pastor Kevin and the staff there.
It's helpful to leave one.
We're talking about life-changing decisions that
But
my first time stepping foot there changed my life. I would not be sitting
oh,
there. if I
and we
hadn't
are
done that.
jewels in your
That's
crown.
amazing.
We're gonna start to fade it down.
Yeah,
Turn
we'll
on
talk
the mics and
about
point
Thank
them.
you.
So the show is basically called Jewels in His Crown, like because we want to talk from where we've been, because most people get delivered from the testimony of our faith.
Absolutely.
So just to even hear about how you lost some of your family members and stuff like that. You ready for me? Go. Hi, you're listening to Jewels in His Crown. I Speak Life on WOVU 95.9 FM, a BBC community radio station. You can also listen streaming live on WOVU.org. We're streaming live Facebook, so if you're on Facebook, we ask that you share it. We think that this show is going to be a blessing. And I am your host, Danielle Williams.
And I'm your other host, Charnay Amers.
And of course, we are always excited when we have amazing guests willing to come on and share their stories and to see where God takes us. So we're honored to have as our guest Minister J. Floyd,
Yes.
who also has a radio show, and who is an author and a motivational speaker. So you know how we're going to do it. He's going to open up with his testimony. We're going to be talking about life-changing decisions, and we'll be dealing with his book, awesome book that I've started reading called The Driver's Seat. So we're going to turn it over to him so he can open up with his testimony.
Wow, thank you. First of all, thank you guys for having me. It feels good to be on this side of the interview. that actually feels really good. Oh man, my testimony constantly grows the more I tell it. Let me just start from saying that I did not grow up in the church. I came from a very religious family who was experiencing a lot of turmoil. So, my family was a typical migrant family in the Great Migration coming up here from Mississippi. And my grandmother and my mom, raised me and my brother. And they wanted us to be in church.
Yeah.
But we were going through so much and just trying to live. For my mom, she was born in 1936. I was kind of a, what they call a menopause baby. So I was born in 1976. So my mom was 40 when I was born, and back then that was a little different. So we kind of skipped a generation. So my mom had been through 2 divorces. She divorced my dad right after I was born. And she had suffered about 5 miscarriages.
Wow.
So life was very, very tough on my mom, very hard. So, you know, she had to become the breadwinner. She got a good job working at the post office, tried to piece her life together. She came from the projects up to the suburbs. It was a nice redemptive story, but it took so much out of her to do it. So for me in my life, for me to come along as her youngest child, the baby, my brother was 4 years older than me, she brought us out of, we probably lived in about the worst neighborhoods you can imagine as a child. And but my mother was kind of just not cut from that cloth to stay there. So she did everything she could to get us out. You know, she had what actually ended up being an ingenious plan. I don't know if she actually sat down to plan it, but her idea was, I want to get my children out of here even if I can't afford to. So I'm going to rent, I'm going to borrow, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get them out of this environment. So when I was about 5 or 6, we started to move out. We would move out to, you know, Cleveland Heights, or we move out to Euclid. We couldn't stay, we couldn't afford it. You know, we get evicted eventually, but she's like, hey, as long as I can get them there.
Oh, that's amazing.
You know, and so we would bounce around house to apartment to house to rental house, eviction. I was so knowledgeable in eviction law as a child. I mean, elementary school.
Wow.
You know, and I'm going to school with, you know, kids their family owns houses and they're 2-parent homes and cars, and we have no car. We are, you know, it was difficult, but I was out of that environment. So I started to build a different route, and I got the chance to see my mother do that for us. So over time, you know, she put everything in place except for we never could get back to church. We were just, I mean, she's working. She ended up having to work every Sunday, so it was difficult. We never got back. But she would always tell me, hey, your friends at school, because we finally got a chance to stay in Cleveland Heights. By the time I hit 4th grade, we went to Cleveland Heights. And I mean, it was like the Cosby Show or something. I mean, literally, like, you know, we stayed on 89th and Buckeye, and that was, you know, we went straight from there to Cleveland Heights, and it was like, wow, like they live in houses. And we rented this house. I remember it cost $500 a month. And this was in 1986. This was 1986. I thought we were rich. I'm like, man, we did it. We did it, but it was unsustainable. My mom just was doing what she could. She couldn't keep paying that. You know, she was borrowing and doing whatever it took. So we stayed there for about 6 months. We got evicted. We got another house a couple streets down. 6 months, evicted. Another house a couple streets down. Got maybe a year. You know, we just do that. But Cleveland Heights became like,
that was still home. She made sure that was going to be home.
Because all of a sudden I hit 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. I finished the whole school in one place.
That's good.
And it was like, oh, this is it.
So in other words, you were like, it was good, but then it was still somewhat the instability there.
There was a ton of instability, but I got a glimpse of what other people had.
I
was like, this is what I see on TV. I went to Monticello Middle School from day 1, 6th grade, to the last day, 8th grade, and that was something special, and I didn't even realize it. It was so special, and I still have the Polaroids of me and my mom from that graduation, and you know, so we roll in that Heights High School, and we're still getting evicted, and you know, my mom was like, hey, if you get a chance, ask your friends, can you visit their church? And so I would, you know, everybody I would meet, I get a best friend, they're like, we go to church, hey, can I go with you? Can you stop by my house and pick me up?
That's good.
And they would. They pick me up, take me with them, and I finally went to one, it was Good Shepherd Baptist Church, with Pastor Hawkins, and there was a vacation Bible school. I didn't know what that was. You know, I just knew it was summertime, and my friend said, we going to this thing. So I went, and there was a man there who changed my life.
That's
I mean, he spoke to me. I had all kind of questions about God and life. What is life? Why would we be living like this? And why? You know, I don't have faith because this, and this. And he explained to me, and he started talking to me in a way that he heard my questions. Anybody else would just be like, hey, don't doubt God. Get out of here with that. You know, just listen. And he would hear me.
That's good.
And he say, listen, I understand what you're feeling, but let me tell you where you're off track. You know, and as a teenager, I didn't quite want to hear it, but he heard me, and that meant something.
Yeah.
And when I got older, I was like, that man heard me. I want to go to places that have people like that.
Yeah.
And they can start, and the more they can hear me, I can understand when I'm wrong. Because that's what I didn't see, that I was wrong.
Yeah.
I couldn't see it because nobody would sit down with me and love it into me.
Yeah.
You know?
Love, that key word, love it
That's
into
good.
me. That's good.
Absolutely. So I started visiting church, and it actually was right on time because as I was 16 years old, my brother got into, he never really lost the street edge. Even as, you know, I mean, he was 4 years older than me. So by the time we got to Heights, he got there, but he wasn't fully in there.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was like,
Yeah, different atmosphere.
for him, it was like, let me see how I can finesse this.
Yeah.
This is another environment. Let me see how I can get over and take over. So he kind of hit the streets, and way more than we knew.
Wow.
Way more. I mean, he was like a gang leader
Oh, wow.
at 17.
Wow.
Leader, like he would just leave school. We got letters like, hey, he's not going at all. Like I think there's probably some kind of record at Heights High
That he
of
was.
number of absences. He just wouldn't go. So we got a letter saying, hey, we have an experiment we're going to do. We're going to open a new school. Used to be an elementary school, Taylor Academy. And we'll send all the bad kids there because we can't have them intermingling with our normal students. And your son's going to be in the first group. So they sent my brother to this thing. And they were like, hey, we understand he has a little brother. We're going to let him go visit so he can see what happens when you go off track. So I went to visit him, and it was like prison, like what I'd imagine prison is. It was, they weren't learning things. They were in the gym, shooting dice, playing basketball. In the school. Yeah. And I didn't need the deterrent because my nature, I didn't want to break the rules ever. Like to see my mom disappointed in me was the worst punishment of all. I didn't need anything else. My brother was a different beast, you know, and so that was just not a deterrent for him. So he hit the streets. He ended up being murdered when he was 19 years old, 1992. I was 16 and still in high school, and it began a long journey for me.
I can imagine.
In what does this mean? You know, my brother was this outspoken, very popular, big guy, bully, fighting all the time, you know, and I was this introvert who my mother would, like when summertime would come, my mom would be like, go outside, get away from me, like it's not healthy.
Because you wanted to stay.
I knew every character on her soap operas. Victor Newman was my guy. Young and the Restless. I mean, you know, that was my life. I just wanted to read comic books and remain under the safety of my mother's warmth.
Now, as we traveled on your journey, there's some things I want to pop in because something you said that your brother was a leader of a gang.
Absolutely.
And you found that out later down the line, because this can also help some other people understand how their family members are in these places. Did you ever, after the fact, as time went on and they already rated them as bad and you've seen them come from that side, did you either have an inkling or thought that is he leading something? Because we be trying to figure out, how do our kids end up to be a gang leader and us not know it?
You know, I probably, out of everybody who knows him or knew him, I probably thought about it the most. You know, he was a special person. He was absolutely, like, everyone who came into contact with him loved him or hated him. Like, he was an extreme. There was no in between. So, you know, he was so popular, and he just had a way with people. For him to lead people was not surprising. Not surprising. What was surprising was, you know, I was a straight A student, always. He was not. He was a straight F student, always. When I got to high school and it came time to prepare for college, I sat down with a counselor and she said, hey, I would like for you to apply to Harvard or Yale because you are very bright. And I didn't see that. I didn't see that potential. My world was small. But she said something that really shook my world up. She said, hey, you are almost as intelligent as your brother.
Wow, that's deep.
Completely shattered my entire reality. My entire life, I was the smart one, and he was the bad one.
And she, wow.
But he was so intelligent. The structure of the school didn't fit him, and they didn't know what to do with him, and they lost him. They couldn't harness him.
Oh wow, that's they telling us we have to go to a break. That's deep. I think we'll come back to that. We'll be back with Jewels in This Crown. I Speak Life with our guest Jay Floyd. Stay tuned. Wow, that's deep because I've heard that most kids that go through that stage of playing out and acting up, they are really very intelligent students and smart, but they just, because of their character,
It's what they put that energy into.
right.
But I mean, look at what they're doing. You know, the social skills that it takes to do what they're doing, the math skills that it takes to do what they're doing. You know, when I used to rap, I had a line once that said, we got mathematicians chopping grams in the kitchen. Because we do. Like the things that it takes to even elevate in what they're doing,
Yeah.
they have to be sharp.
That's good.
Very sharp. You know, it's just the way that it's directed.
So you can play.
It's misdirected. You
I
know?
saw a post a couple days ago that said, like, if you can sell drugs, like, you can run a business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, there were all these different parallels to the negatives. Like, you can really take that energy
Yeah.
and make it something amazing, but you're absolutely correct. Like, where you're guided. Because if you have somebody to come in your life and say, hey, this is what you have the ability to be, but if all of the people around you are doing this, there's nobody to speak life to your gift. Your gift can only go as far as you're exposed to.
Yes.
So to be in the middle of that, because it's two brothers, are you the only?
I'm the only one left. It was just the two of us.
Really? Two brothers.
30 seconds.
How?
30 seconds.
Okay. What made you go different from? Because you're in the same atmosphere,
So I always
the
pull
same
it,
environment.
I always pull it back to
You know,
I think about it all the time.
You know what I'm saying?
I think I was always on that. I don't think I veered off. I was always in one path. It's just that I would have been extremely out of place had my mother not gotten us out of there. But I was always that kid.
Oh, that's good.
You good.
We are back with Jewels in This Crown. I Speak Life on WOVU 95.9 FM, BBC Community Radio. And we are on with our special guest, Jay Floyd, and we are talking about life-changing decisions. And one of the things you brought up during the break that I think is a good place to jump back in, you know, you and your brother growing up in the same household, having the same experiences, but ultimately choosing two different life paths. What made you choose a different path?
You know, I think that overall it's the nature of who we are. You know, I think that was always my nature. You know, one of the things is, how do we interpret what's in a person? I know when I was young, my mom, she experienced such a rough life. My mother was all about justice and fairness, and this life is about none of that. So for her, this world was horrible, and that's just what she felt. So to have two boys, after all of these miscarriages, to finally have two boys, she felt like this world's gonna eat you guys up. So she would always prepare us, and for me, she felt like I was the one who was not ready. And she'd say, man, I feel so bad for you, Jay. So bad. I feel like you're too nice for this world. It's gonna hurt you.
Wow. What's so good about your book, taking those experiences in here? And I read a part where you said you learned a lot from life, listening to your mom and brother talk in the front seat of the car.
Yeah.
So to even experience that, did they ever have that conversation where she seen your brother, and what's your brother's name? So
Julius.
Yes. Where she seen Julius going in the different, because you already said you two were like night and day, and she knew that. Did she have those conversations? And what were you taking from those conversations? So you were saying you took so much from the back seat.
Well, one thing, I want to talk about mental health awareness in the Black community is something that we need to bring into the forefront. You know, because it's not one thing that we think is just somebody's just born messed up. It's just not how it works.
That's so not true.
This is and you know, I talked about this a second ago. My mom was really scarred by this world. You know, by her experiences. By the time I was born, she was 40. She had been through so much. I couldn't even relate to the things she had been through. So what we saw in her was the beginnings of mental illness. And my mom was extremely paranoid. It's what I know now as paranoid delusional. But as a child, and that being your mom and me being a mama's boy, I didn't know. But she would have conversations with my brother about him being so daring and so out there. Like he was just so excited. You know, like you ever read something about like Tupac or somebody like that? Somebody who lives life like that.
Yeah.
They just impact this world and they're out. He lived like that. Like there was always at age 15, 16, it's like he just was unstoppable. Anything he wanted to do, he was going to do it, regardless of the caution, regardless of the morality, he was going to go do it. And my mom she was just tortured by that because she's a paranoid. So she always thought something's going to harm you, both of you. And me and my brother would actually have conversations like, what are we going to do about mom? She's having some problems. It's getting out of hand. What are we going to do? The unfortunate part, and probably the saddest part, is my brother was killed right as we were having those conversations. We never really got a chance to decide what are we going to do together. He was just gone, and it was me, 16 years old. What am I going to do about the fact that my mom, who's paranoid, has now had her paranoia validated? So now it's completely unstoppable. There's nothing I can say to her because she was right.
So in her mindset, it wasn't paranoia.
Absolutely.
It was fact because of everything that she'd been through in her life. Fact is, this is how the world is. And so you now left to kind of get her, that's deep.
It was really tough. Like like I said, we would get evicted from a lot of places. You know, my mom lost her job right after my brother was killed. Like there's no way she could really work. You know, so there probably should have been some kind of a program where she could get some long bereavement or something, but there was nothing like that. So she had to just work, and it didn't work, and she was fired. And but she worked for the USPS, and so they unionized. So the union went to fight for her. So over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, she just fought for her job, and that was her entire life, to protect me and fight for her job. It became her entire existence. She didn't want me to go anywhere, and as a 16-year-old, that's the opposite of what you want. You know, I'm trying to go out and enjoy my life and have fun, and I just want to be a normal kid. But I can't leave the house because my mom thinks the same thing is going to happen to me. So that was really difficult, and that's why I can relate to a lot of people when they talk about mental illness, because I understand it doesn't come in the forms that we think it looks like. You know, and looking back on it, I see now there's so many people, like we talk about hood life. Hood life is so many things. It's so many reasons why people are there and what people are going through and how they're being affected by it. It's really tough, and the best thing we can have is a heart of compassion.
Yeah, that's good. In your journey, what would you say the moment when like life shifted for you? And I know we kind of do different shifts in life, but the moment where like the shift first happened. I'll
say this, it probably was very slow for me, but one of the things that God does is He'll plant seeds. I firmly believe that God gives us every single thing that we need to be exactly who He created us to be.
That's good.
We can continue to ignore it sometimes. You know, like we'll look at the case of my brother and say, okay, the school couldn't handle it. He had everything he needed.
And it was the choice.
It was the choices made. So for me, I would say it started when my brother was killed. There was an incident of And I tell people this, and I used to not tell people this because they didn't believe me. But when I was growing up, my brother was extremely ultra masculine. You know, they talk about toxic masculinity. We all grew up in that. You know, brothers, cousins, uncles, is how it was. I didn't have that nature. You know, just who I was, I just wanted to be me, right? So there were things I'd do as a kid, and I'd just be me, right? So one time I was in school and I made a teddy bear. You know, we did home ec, learn how to sew. My mom had already taught us how to sew because, I mean, she felt like that was key for a man. So I sewed a teddy bear and I gave it to my mom. My brother made fun of it so bad. It's like, oh, this is gay. Oh, this is feminine. You shouldn't do that. All of these things, right? And I ignored it. I wanted to give my mom something that was special. I was a mama's boy. I wanted to please her. And then there was this blanket, you know, those small throw blankets. I had one of those when I was a kid, and I hung on this thing like Linus. I would carry it everywhere. When I got too big for it, he made fun of me. And so I'm like, okay, I won't carry this thing around. I'm going to give it to mom because she's getting older, and she gets cold a lot. Her legs are cold. This fits her legs.
Yeah.
I'll give it to her. It's perfect. So I gave it to her. Those things were long gone by the time I was 16. They're put away in an attic somewhere, wherever they are. My brother, when he passed away, we had his funeral. My mom said, we can't go back to that house because his room looks like what it did when he left. I can't handle that. So we left and we stayed with family for a few weeks. When we finally built up the courage to come back to that house, we opened the front door and that blanket is neatly folded in front of the door with the teddy bear sitting on top of it. Now, my mom could not handle that. She is like, she turned around. She's like, there's no way I'm going in that house. I can't even explain any of that. But for me, I knew exactly what it was. I knew those were things that I had given to my mom. That was a message that I was going to have to be there for her. It was very clear to me. I was extremely calm. My mom, a little different.
So even at that young age of going through what you were going through, I'm sure you had residue from the loss of your brother.
Absolutely.
We're going to talk more of the things that took place, losing so many of your family members. But even in that, you were seeing spiritual things that would let you know that this is the path that you need to take. That's what I'm hearing.
Absolutely. And I had no doubt. In the moment, I thought my brother moved it. And I went to speak to people, and I found people who they said, here's the person you should speak to. This person can really give you the spiritual insight you need. And they said, hey, sometimes when a spirit is taken out of this world traumatically and dramatically in a sharp fashion, they still have some work to do. And they will return to do that work. And I believed that, and I felt like, okay, my brother moved those things as his final task and before he could leave. But as I began to grow in the Word, I understand that God can do what God needs to do.
Yes.
That's good.
You know, and my brother's spirit, he moved on. God did what he needed to do to give me the message I needed. Because I was the one left. I still have a work to do. And God, like I said, he gives us everything we need to do the work that's set forth for us. Just like he did Adam, he gave him everything he needed and some work. That's it. That's what he does for all of us. So this is what I'm still doing, my work.
Your work. And it's so good that you bring out that point, because and I want to go back to, because you said your mom divorced your dad when you were a kid. Did your father play a role in your life?
Yes.
Still in all of that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Yes. It was actually probably the most beautiful part of the story. My parents did divorce bitterly. My existence, my birth was the trigger for them breaking up. For a lot of people, they could take that as feeling like it's their fault. I understand it's not my fault. But for them to have a second child, they didn't get married on the premise of them being parents. They both had been married before and had no kids. So they didn't think they could have kids. So when they got married and then they have 2 kids, all of a sudden, now we have to agree on how to raise children. And when they got together on, hey, how do we enjoy life and go on vacations and do this type of thing? Agreeing on how to have children, they couldn't do it. So they struggled through my brother for 4 years. When I came, it's like with 2, we're going to have to agree, and they couldn't. So immediately split. I was 2 months old, and immediately split. My mom, this is the 80s, right? Actually 70s into the 80s. My mom basically, and we can get into it more after our break, but my mom basically got full custody.
Okay.
Complete full custody, like they used to back in the old days, where my dad couldn't see me unless she said it was okay. Right? And so my mom would do the thing that's really unhealthy. She'd say, "Hey, do you want to see him?" And I'd say, "No." And she'd be like, "Okay, then you don't need to see him." Yeah.
Wow. We are going to go to a break, and we'll be back with Jules and His Crown. I Speak Life.
Well, so you were the decision maker on whether or not. Really?
Me and my brother, always. Yeah.
That is so different.
Yeah.
Wait, but why do you say that's unhealthy?
It's not the thing to do. Because here's the thing, I was absorbing my mother's energy. Do I want to see him? Of course not. Because you don't want to see him. Why would I want to see him?
Why, like, what was your why? But
Yeah.
you didn't really have at that point, you didn't really have a relationship with him.
None. I had
Yeah, you
none.
were a baby, so.
How old were you when she was asking you?
All my whole life. My whole life. Because my brother was 4 years older. So she was asking him. And by the time I got old enough to be asked, the same thing for you. You know, no, but my brother was smart enough to know I do want to see him because he remembered him.
Yeah.
He remembered them being married, so it was hurtful for him.
Yeah.
You know, but for me it was like, I don't even remember y'all being married. Like, this is my life. You know, I don't want this to change. I don't want to go see him and his new wife.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that.
And I always say the kid takes the side of the emotion.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Of the emotion, because it's
Absolutely.
I connect with the emotion of what my mom feels. So as hard as it is, as bad as I want to see him,
Yes.
but the emotional side is saying, Mom,
That's completely
I don't want
true.
to disappoint my mother.
Yeah.
Yes.
oh, that is so, yeah. That, and okay, so we got when we come back, we want to talk about how he comes, because I know you wrote a book about fatherhood too.
Yes.
Oh, I told you I've been reading. This is a good book.
When he put on
I'm telling you.
I did have my dad's a great man. My dad would be
Yeah.
excellent.
So I want to talk about how did you get back into that relationship with them, and that is yeah. But it is, if we take the side of the one who is the most, if we're, especially if we're in the custody of the one that is the most emotionally hurt, and we respond to their energy.
Absolutely.
You're so that is
I don't want to see him. Why?
Then hit the mics and then
when it
fade
should
out.
be. We're not going to let our breakup affect the children, and that, I think that's what's happening a lot in society today, because a lot of them are they're reacting to who's in their life. Oh,
That's a nice song.
thank you. Thanks to Bronson Landrum. We are back to Jules and His Crown, I Speak Life on WOVU 95.9 FM. And we're streaming live on WOVU.org, and we're with our guest, Jay Floyd, who also has a radio show. We don't want to miss that, Code M, which is a very good show. So we want to talk about that because you talked about the energy of your mom. So the response on having a relationship with your father was based on how she was feeling.
Yeah.
So how did you get through that? Because we're talking about life-changing decisions, and we need, and parents, women, this is something for you too, because even today we use our children. Well, I never was like that, but I'll be inclusive. Women use their children to control the relationship, and I think that that's so unfair. How did that affect you as you grew older and start realizing you really wanted to have your father a part of your life?
Yeah, it's a difficult situation, and it's something that I actually, strangely enough, find myself life coaching some women through now. Two of my life coaching clients go through this struggle now. The thing is, it's kind of prophetic. One of the best things my brother ever said to me was, "Life is not fair." Whoever told you that? And that's true. You can't find that anywhere in the scripture. nowhere does God say fairness is what this is going to be about. Life is a challenge, life is a struggle. Even God's own son, when he came here, had challenge and struggle.
Yeah.
So I say that one of the things about that, it's never that cut and dry when it comes to co-parenting. It's never this person's bad, this person's completely good. It's always a mix of a whole bunch of things. So the best thing you can do is to not judge anything. You know, you have to say, I'm not the judge of man. I have to do the best I can to try to, we've gone off course from where God wants us to be. This is not an ideal situation. But God can still show up in it if we love his way. And God's way is agape.
Yeah.
God's way says, stop getting into the details of who deserves what and just love. So when I was 16, my mom lost her job. She initially took us to a hotel. We lived in the Days Inn in Mentor. There, she called, and my mom was a very intelligent woman. She talked to the managers and set up a monthly payment program where we could literally live there. And so I would go to school from there. We wake up in the hotel room. She'd drive me to school, pick me up, and we go back, and I do my homework in the hotel room, and we do it all over again. But the school found out that I didn't live in the city anymore, so they kicked me out. And so then my mom lost a portion of her fight with the job, and we had no income. So we essentially became homeless. And my mom was going to have to move into the homeless shelter, but she didn't want that for me. So she had to do the last thing she ever wanted to do, which was call my father.
Wow.
And tell him that I needed to move in. And of course, he's like, absolutely, let's do this. And so I packed a gym bag, a purple gym bag, I'll never forget it. And my mom dropped me at his front door when I was 17, almost 17.
Wow.
And I had never really been around him other than, you know, some visits on holidays and birthdays. I had never spent any extended time with him. And, you know, he had a wife that he had been married to for a long time at that point. And she had children and grandchildren and a whole bunch of people that lived in that house. And they knew him in a way that I didn't know him, you know, and it was difficult, but it was like the prodigal son. He welcomed me with open arms.
That's
and,
good.
you know, let's do this. You know, I love you, and I've always wanted this. And, you know, and here's the thing. How did I do it? I didn't do it. The Holy Spirit did it.
Yeah.
We don't have that ability to love like that and forgive like that.
Yeah.
We don't. That's why when we try to do it, it doesn't work. I'm blessed in the fact the Holy Spirit moved so profoundly on me that I wasn't even in church. I wasn't even actively reading the Word. And the Holy Spirit moved on me and said these exact words: you need to move from this day forward. You were never married to that man. You have to know him as your father.
Yeah.
You have to give him a chance to be your father. And that's the only thing you can judge him on.
That's good.
And I did. I walked in there just like that. And I remember he called my mom after a few weeks and he said, you know what, I've been paying child support all these years. Turn it off. I would like to do for my own child. And my mother, in her normal fashion, she looked at me. And on one of her days, she was coming to visit. She was in the homeless shelter. So she's benefiting from this child support, big time. And I sit in her car right in front of my dad's house, and she said, I'm gonna leave it up to you. It's your child support. And I said, Mom, I know this is hard, but I'm gonna turn it off. Because he should be doing for me, period. He should be doing for me from his own hands. He deserves a right to do this. We've benefited from this my entire life, and my brother's entire life. I'm gonna turn it off. And we did, and he never let me down. And to add, nor my mother.
Yeah, I was gonna say that because it seemed like even though she had the paranoia, even though she was going through the mental issues, it was always what was best for the both of you. You know, and because I've heard you say that from the beginning of time, even though the instability was there, she was determined to do the best that she could for you. So the sacrifice was not for her, it was for her babies.
Always. Her entire life. It's funny because now my dad has passed on, my mom has passed on, And my stepmother is the only person from my childhood who's still alive, ironically enough. And we have a great relationship. And I talk to her, and if you ask her anything about my mother, her and my mother did not get along in life. You ask her anything about my mother, she says the same thing. That woman loved her children.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Period. That's all she'll ever say. That woman loved you, and she would do anything for you.
Wow. You just blew my mind when you said that. Out of all the ones that were in your life,
Yeah.
it's just you.
Yep.
And I read that in the book, and I know it's like I'm in shock because to know you talked about that. You even talked about when you made the decision to do counseling because you were not able to deal with those emotions, and you were scared to talk about it to people because they would label you. And you talked about, and I want to talk about that. I'm sorry because it just fell right here because you talked about how you would disconnect from people because of losing everyone else. So you put a guard up.
It's a classic symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder. Yeah, which is what I had, and I didn't know it. It was just what a lot of black people have, and they don't know it. You know, the things that we go through are not natural. It's not the way life is meant to go. You know, when we experience these things and we see these things, sometimes we'll be like, I'm good. I don't feel anything. What's there to feel about it? We're just in denial about it. We're feeling it.
Yeah. We're
feeling it. We're affected by it. You know, we're scarred deeply. You know, and that's just the way it is. You know, for me, life was so deep. I felt almost like I was drowning most of the time. You know, walking into my dad's house and having to live there, I didn't know how to navigate those emotions. My father left his arms open. That was great, but now what?
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know how to do that. There's people living here. I don't really know them that much. You know, and I had to live there for some years. At the same time, my mom's trying to stay out of a homeless shelter. That's so much stress. How do you go to high school and try to go to college? And here I am, a straight A student who everybody expects to go off and have this collegiate career somewhere and become like some kind of stockbroker or something. How do you do that when you're just worried about real life, the people you love? You know, how do you do that? And there's so many people in that situation
right now. Yeah.
One of the questions that comes up in my mind is, as a black man in this society, how do you evolve through the struggle? Because that's everyday life.
It
you know
is.
what I mean? Like this is not a fairy tale. Like this is weird. A place. Aren't you talking?
That's
it's a place that they're living through, but especially as black men because. And I'm a black woman. I don't know what it is to be a black man, but to see that you have to be strong and you can't show no emotion and I ain't no punk, I'm good.
Yeah.
But how as a black man do you evolve into the struggle so you can walk into wholeness?
You know what? Everyone has everything that they need. And at some point you have to start paying attention to it. And, you know, you get kicks in the butt too. You get, you know, when I was 20, I existed in my father's house for about 4 years. And when I was 20, I was still coming and going to community college, working at fast food places, not doing much. No trouble though. I'm me. I'm just doing me. Coming home, enjoying life, worrying about my mom every day. Same routine. Came home one day and my bag was packed. And it was sitting on the bed. And the bedroom was made up very neatly, like I didn't live there anymore. And my father was waiting up for me. And he said, you know what? I understand life's been tough on you, but you gotta go.
Wow.
You're gonna have to leave. And I'm like, Dad, I don't have anywhere to live. And he's like, I understand that, and I can help you out as much as I can, but there's a limit to that too. But you gotta go, like now. And I was like, you know, I'm crying, and I remember distinctly, I said, Mom would never do this. And he looked at me, and I know it hurt him, but he said, you're absolutely right, and I'm not your mother. I'm your father. You are not living up to your potential, and you gotta go. He's like, there's a hotel down the street. I'll put you up in there for 3 days. at the end of that 3 days, I want you to have a plan of what you're going to do with your life. And he did. He drove me to that hotel, and of course I called my mom, blabbering and blaming him and saying you were right about him and everything. He's wrong, and I see exactly why he left him and all those things. But let me tell you, sitting here right now, 43 years old, that was the greatest day of my life.
Yeah.
I would have nothing if it wasn't for that day. And he knew it. And as a father now, I know how hard it was for him to say that stuff. How strong of a man you have to be to sit there without breaking down and say what you need to say to get your child where they need to go. Oh, I admire him so much. And I've been able to tell him that over the years too.
Wow. That's so good.
We're going to go to a break. This is so good. This hour is going by so fast. We'll be right back with Jules in His Crown, I Speak Life.
Because and that would lead us right into your book, because
you gotta be fast
right
with
when
them,
you
'cause
said how
keep talking after the break.
Yeah.
She pointed to me and I was like, sorry.
No, I don't know. But what did you? So why do you say that is the best? Like, you know, I know you felt distraught. You felt like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
And what
Big
did you do?
time.
That's what I really want to know. What happened after that? What did
I
you
called
do?
my mom and I cried.
Yeah.
And I called all of my friends and I told them my dad's horrible.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I laid down and I went to sleep.
What was your mother's response?
The same. You're right. He is horrible. I told you so. I told you so. This is what I've been telling you. This is what I've been warning you about.
But after
And I
the
went
3
to sleep.
days,
You would be amazed at what sleep can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, in the word it says, "Be still and know that I am God."
Yeah.
Sometimes you just gotta go to sleep.
Yeah.
And you wake up with a different clarity, and I did. I woke up and I knew. I was like, he's right. You know, and I went off and I started building my life. You know, I called my mom, and she said, okay, here's what we can do. Tell him you have an apartment, because I've been looking at one. If he can put the down payment down, we can get this thing done. You can move in with me. Everything is going to be great. It'll be just like it was before. And I called him, and he said, you know what? I don't think this is the right move, but I'll do it. And he did. He put us up in this little rinky one bed. I mean, it was so run down. And my mom, I mean, she's been in and out of shelters. She's hurting. She's older. She's almost 60 at this point. And, you know, we had this one bedroom. And she was like, you take the bed. And I'm like, no. And she's like, I won't hear anything
30
else.
seconds.
Wow. So it challenged you to say, I know where I came from, and I want to make it better.
Yeah. But I knew he was right.
Wow.
I went right back into the old thing.
You
And,
did.
yeah, and that was not the place to be. And that's
Wow.
what motivated me to go off and build my own life. I love my mom, but there comes a time when you gotta go build your own life.
Yeah.
Come on. I didn't
You
need
gotta-
nothing else.
You gotta say that.
That was what I needed
You
to
got that is.
Ready?
Woo, yeah.
You're on. Go ahead.
We are back with Jules in This Crown. I Speak Live on WOVU 95.9 FM. And you gotta, because we were talking, and you made a valid point that I think people need to hear, because we're talking about life-changing decisions. Say what you just said about your father being
Well,
right and what you said.
Yeah, the question was, what did I do when he sent me to this hotel? And I went to sleep. And after I called my mom and told her what happened, and she said he was horrible, and, you know, told me this is why, what I've been warning you about, I went to sleep. And in the sleep, I got some calm and peace. And when I woke up, I knew I needed a plan. Like he said, you get 3 days, have a plan. It's always been my dad's word. Have a plan and I'll support you. So I called my mom, and together we made a plan. She said, if you can get him to put the down payment on this apartment, we can get our life back. We'll be back. It'll be me and you just like it used to be. Everything will be back to normal. And I called him. He said, I don't agree with this, but I'll do it. And he did it. We moved into this apartment. It's one bedroom. It was really run down, and there were roaches everywhere, and it was horrible, and it smelled bad. And I couldn't take it. And I remember my mom said, you know, go out, hang out with your friends, come back. And I went out and came back, and she had cleaned the entire thing like it was almost like a brand new place. Like it smelled good. Everything in there was good. She's like, we're going to start over. This is going to be it. And it was 1 bedroom. And I'm like, you know, Ma, you're older. You get that bedroom. And she's like, no, I'm not having that. I've lived my life. I want you in that bedroom. You got to rest. You got your whole life ahead of you. And there's no telling my mother. I mean, she's a very strong woman. So I took the bedroom. And I remember laying there, stayed there for about a week. I was laying there and I was, you know, doing the same routine. Get up and go to my fast food job, go to community college, come home. And my mom, I would notice she wouldn't sleep. She would just sit in the chair. She wouldn't even lay. She would sit in a recliner and write all night. Just write. And you know, I remember thinking, my dad was right. This is not the right plan. I'm back in my mother's womb. I love my mother, but there comes a time when you got to start your own life. And I remember it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. We didn't have any cable, but I'm flipping through the TV channels, you know, with the knob. You know, and I'm turning the knob to see if I can get anything to come in. And there was this commercial, and it said, hey, do you like computers? Come to DeVry Institute. And I was like, I love computers. I can do that. And they were like, hey, we only have a Columbus, Ohio branch, so you got to come here and go to school. And so I called my dad, and I said, hey, can you take me to Columbus, Ohio? And he's like, well, what for? I'm like, well, there's a school down there, and I think I can build my life there. And he's like, okay. So we got in his car, and he drove me down there, and there was this orientation, and they walked in, and they're like, hey, this is not the ordinary college. You're going to have to work, pay bills, pay rent. There's no dorms. You got to get your own apartment and build your own life. And my dad looked at me, and he said, this is the place for you. I'll see you later. And he left me there.
That's good.
And he left me there. And everything that I have now, my career, everything was built from that moment.
That's good.
And, you know, I went so hard. My mom actually passed away the next year. And it was a tough moment, but I knew she had reached the end of her journey. She got me where she needed to get. That was her entire concern. What was going to happen with me? So I was off in my journey, and you know, I went and I had more work to do. I was still broken. I wasn't fully functional. I was just motivated. So I started building a life. I started a career. I started making money. I was making a lot of money. I bought a house. I bought cars. I got a girlfriend and moved her into the house. We had a baby together. I did everything but marry her, like a lot of men do. And I didn't know why. But I know that when my daughter was 2 years old, her mom walked away, and she said, I can't do this anymore because I was not right. I was not right. I wasn't justifying her and honoring her, and she walked out. And in that moment, I saw me.
Wow.
With my daughter leaving, I saw me and my dad. And my dad, we had developed a very good relationship. He loved the fact that I became a responsible man. He would come visit me every week. Every Sunday at my house, he would come over and tell me all kind of stories about growing up in Alabama. And we bonded, and I learned that I'm exactly like him. We are so much alike. I love that man. Great man. And the hardest thing in the world was for me to tell him that my daughter was not going to be there that Sunday.
Wow.
And I remember we sat on the porch, and I told him, and he didn't flinch. You know, my dad was an old man at this point, 70 plus. He didn't flinch. He had seen everything. And he's like, okay, but I know you're going to do the right thing. I trust you, and you're going to do the right thing. And I couldn't, the weight of that statement, but I could see a little glimpse in him where he's like, he was hurt that the same thing happened in my life, that he couldn't do anything to stop it.
Wow.
And right then I knew something's wrong with me. Something's wrong, and I got to go get it fixed. And my daughter's mom, her uncle he had called me, and he's like, hey, I heard you guys had a breakup. I got a marriage counselor if you want to call him. And I was like, no, yeah, give me that number. And I took the number, and I remember I sat on the stairs, and I called her, and she's like, hey, when do you and your wife want to come in? And I was like, that's no wife. It's just me. I got to find out what's wrong with me. And she said, well, you're halfway there.
That's good.
That's good.
And that was the beginning of my journey right there.
Oh, that's so good.
And I was there, everything. And I went and I sat on her couch, and I told her my entire life story, which ended up being my first book,
Okay.
The Poet Who Watched the Whole Parade. I told her about everything. And that's when she said, listen, you are still in the backseat of your life, and your mother and your brother are driving. but they're not here anymore. You're going to have to properly mourn them
Yeah.
so you can get out,
Woo.
get in that driver's seat,
Yeah.
and drive your life. And that's where this book came from.
That brings us to this book. You need to get the book. It's The Driver's Seat. Climb out of life's back seat and step into your God-given purpose. So we have to kind of hurt. We ain't got.
I told you, my story's a long one. It's always
Oh my
long,
goodness,
man.
you gotta continue this.
I need a tissue.
You know. Oh
It's
wow.
always a long
So
one, man.
there, we gonna, because we don't have but so many minutes. But I'm gonna read the chapters so you can get the book. Somehow we're gonna have to come back and
Yes.
touch this. But the chapters are the vehicle, the present of the present, workmanship. I love that.
Yes.
God's toolbox. Chapter 2 is the back seat. How did I get stuck in the back seat? Find the seatbelt. Open the door. Chapter 3, drive, and it has driver's ed and know your engine. So I
Yes.
want to talk about that, know your engine,
Yeah.
because I know I remember reading, and you and your wife had just happened to have a discussion
Yeah.
to talk about how you got to your purpose and everything, and you have to read it for yourself. 2 minutes. So I want you to talk about that engine and speak to the audience, the listening audience, and give them a word of encouragement. We're going to close out on that, on however God leads you.
Well,
And we're going to bring you back.
Know your engine is, I would love to come back. But know your engine is all about knowing who you are and how your engine burns. Everybody has a different heart and a different fire inside of them. Not everybody wakes up every day like my brother did, thinking, I'm going to go accomplish something today. Not everybody wakes up like that. I don't wake up like that. I wake up relaxed. I'm a laid back kind of person. So, it's, in psychology calls this alpha, beta personalities and omega personalities. You don't have to go by the psychologist's definition, but we all know that we're different personality types. Alphas, Donald Trump type people. They usually take, because other people are relaxed, so they're taking in that space. Not everybody's like that, but you can still achieve like those people. You don't have to do it like that.
Yeah.
But all you have to do is know how your engine burns. If I know I'm a laid back person, that means I have to have more motivation in the mornings.
Yeah.
So I have to be way more careful about what's in my social media feed. I gotta be way more careful about what's the first thing I do in the morning. How am I getting out the gate? When I wake up, the first thing I do is say, thank you, God, for choosing me again today. Because He didn't choose everybody.
Yeah, it's good.
That's
good.
real
Thank
good.
you for choosing me. And when I say it that way, I understand there's a lot of miracles that went into just me rolling over. Just in our bodies, just for that to happen. I can moan about my back hurting, but 500 other miracles happen. So I got to say thank you and help me get over these physical weaknesses I have. Post-traumatic stress disorder, panic disorder. These things are physical limitations that God says, I'm above that. And I can get you past that every day. But you got to come to Him every day. His mercies are new every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got to always keep renewing it.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great show. I advise you to get the driver's seat. I've started reading this, and we're going to bring Minister Jay back, because I think it's so important that men need to hear his story.
Yeah.
And even women need to hear his story. And you got to know that you have a purpose. God, anything that God created, He created intentionally and on purpose.
Yes.
Yes.
And so you have a purpose for being. So we thank you. We thank you for just sacrificing and taking the assignment to minister to people. You're coming back soon.
Absolutely. I would love to.
We tell them where to find you, and then we'll just go.
They can find me on my webpage is jfloydspeaks.com, and you can check me out on Facebook at jfloydspeakslife, at Instagram, and anywhere else you can find me at jfloydspeaks. And I'm all over the place. And my Amazon page. Go check out J. Floyd on Amazon.
And you can tune in to Code M here
Yes.
on WOVU.
Thursdays, 6 p.m.
Thursday, 6 p.m.
Yes.
Keep your station locked on WOVU 95.9. God bless. Whew. Wow. You gotta continue this.
Yes, I would love to.
Show. Wow.
You have him back next week?
Powerful,
Yeah,
I would love to.
We can complete it.
So good.
We're gonna complete
Part two.
Part 2. We might as well go forward. That's good.
Cause you gotta talk
That is
about how you got
phenomenal.
from the ride
To-
computer
yeah.
guy to life
I know,
coach.
right? I do.
Yeah,
Although I'm
right.
still a computer guy. I'm
You are?
senior
Stop
nowadays.
that.
Yes.
Great.
So you do both,
Oh.
okay.